The lights in the studio blazed down, like truth waiting to be revealed. Sweat shimmered along Jimmy Kimmel's brow, but his grin was firm, sculpted by years of command over crowds and cameras. Tonight's stage, however, didn't feel quite the same. Karoline Leavitt, dressed in a crimson suit that seemed to pulse with restrained fire, sat opposite him, still, poised, unreadable. Her hands were folded neatly, fingers locked tight as if containing a storm beneath her skin. The audience buzzed, split like the country it represented. Some came to laugh. Others came to witness a reckoning. Jimmy raised his eyebrows with theatrical flourish and leaned in. "So, Karoline," he began, his tone light but loaded. "Tell me, does the president enjoy swinging golf clubs more than swinging U.S. economic policy?" A ripple of laughter swept across the liberal side of the room. Karoline didn't blink. "Depends," she replied, voice cool as marble. "Do comedians enjoy cherry-picking facts more than telling the truth?" A sharp gasp, followed by the slow clap of those waving red-capped merchandise in the front row. Jimmy chuckled, but it sounded thin, rehearsed. He pivoted again. Let's be honest, tariffs were his war cry. Now he's pressing pause. What's next? A group hug with China? She smiled, barely. What's next is a 12% market surge and a 125% tariff on Chinese imports. That's what strength looks like, Jimmy, not punchlines. His laughter faltered. A shadow flickered across his features, but it passed quickly. He leaned back, adjusting his cuffs like armor. But Karoline leaned forward. Her voice softened, laced with heat and ice all at once. "Keep laughing," she said, eyes fixed on him. "Just know that every joke comes with a receipt." The studio held its breath. A flash of something, anger, or something darker, passed through her gaze. Not rage, not revenge, intent. What the cameras didn't see that night was where this feud would really end. Karoline didn't sleep that night. She sat alone in her hotel suite, bathed in the sterile glow of the TV's silent replay. Her expression was unreadable, yet her fingers clenched the remote with quiet rage. The crowd's divided laughter still echoed inside her head, not because it hurt, but because it proved what she already knew. This country didn't want the truth. It wanted blood sport dressed as banter. She remembered another stage years ago. College debate finals. The night her mentor-turned-rival, Brent Marlowe, publicly blindsided her. In front of judges and cameras, he exposed a personal email she once sent him in confidence. It wasn't just academic betrayal. It was heartbreak. The humiliation left a scar she never allowed to heal. That moment birthed a promise. Never be unprepared again. Now she lived by that oath, weaponizing data like bullets, dressing in sharp lines and colder smiles. And yet, that night with Jimmy, something pierced the armor. Not his jokes, not the applause. It was his ease, the smug way he leaned into the crowd, still adored, still untouchable. Jimmy, for all his glibness, wasn't immune either. Backstage, after the taping, he sat with his assistant, hands buried in his hair. "She came for blood," he muttered. "They set me up, didn't they?" His assistant hesitated. "You think she knew about the Marlowe file?" Kimmel looked up. His smirk returned, but now it had cracks. "She's not here to win debates. She's here to destroy reputations." The producers at the network had seen it coming. In fact, they wanted it. They had slipped Kimmel pre-researched bullet points, just enough to provoke, but not enough to protect him. They weren't building an interview. They were crafting a cliffhanger. Meanwhile, Karoline's aide, a man with no public record and eyes like a scalpel, reviewed footage frame by frame. His name was Elias Vaughn, and his whispered counsel was the only voice Karoline truly trusted. Blinked once, he said, rewinding. At the Marlowe reference, we hit a nerve. She leaned closer, her breath shallow. Then we bury him with it. Behind the stage lights and makeup, this wasn't a policy debate. It was the beginning of a war, and every war begins with betrayal. Karoline sat at the edge of her bed, blinds drawn tight against the midday sun. The silence in her suite wasn't peace. It was a prison. Her phone chimed again, the screen lighting up with another anonymous message. You'll burn in the fire you lit. Most messages were like this, rage dressed as righteousness. Others were worse. Threats against her family. Graphic descriptions of what patriots would do if they saw her again. But not all were hostile. A growing number hailed her as a truth-teller, a symbol of resistance. They called her the Voice. Some sent flowers, others mailed rosaries. She wasn't flattered, she was frightened, and somewhere deep down, thrilled. By night, Karoline replayed the interview on loop. Her fingers traced her laptop's trackpad like a lover's spine. She journaled compulsively. Every phrase Kimmel used, every smirk, every tick. He doesn't just joke, she wrote. He belittles. He belittled me. Her handwriting was tight, frantic. The lines between campaign strategy and personal obsession blurred until they bled into each other. Across town, Jimmy sat in his office, laughing too loud at a rerun of his own show. His staff chuckled politely, but the air was brittle. His producer, Monica, lingered by the door. "You okay?" she asked gently. "I'm golden," Jimmy replied, forcing a grin. She had her moment. We'll move on. But Monica noticed what the others did too. His late nights, the way he jumped when his phone buzzed, the way his hands trembled slightly during rehearsals. Something in Karoline's stare during that taping had sunk its teeth into him. He wouldn't admit it, but she'd gotten under his skin. Meanwhile, Elias Vaughn had been busy. He returned to Karoline days later, setting a thin folder before her. "On the table, it's called Operation Redemption," he said coolly. "We reveal the truth. Let it do the work." She opened the folder. Inside were transcripts, screenshots, digital whispers tied to a name in Kimmel's production circle. Associate producer with sealed legal history. Allegations, settlements. A woman silenced. Karoline's breath caught. How sure are we? Enough to make him sweat. Enough to destroy him. She closed the folder, eyes glinting with something unreadable. "Then we don't release it. Not yet." "You want leverage. I want control." Elias nodded approvingly. The plan was no longer about facts. It was retribution wrapped in righteousness. Meanwhile, Kimmel had begun receiving anonymous envelopes. The first was a printed joke from 5 years ago, highlighted in red ink. "Trump's ego is so fragile, it should come with bubble wrap." Under it, typed neatly, "You'll need more than jokes when the truth bursts." Another note arrived, taped to his dressing room mirror. "Tonight's joke is tomorrow's confession." Jimmy tried to laugh it off again, but this time no one in the room smiled. In the court of public opinion, everyone is either a prosecutor or a defendant, and sometimes justice is just another word for vengeance. The invitation came under the pretense of reconciliation, an exclusive follow-up interview to bridge the divide. Karoline accepted without hesitation. The studio lights seemed dimmer this time, the energy thinner, like everyone sensed. The storm approaching but refused to name it. No audience, just cameras and closed doors. Off-air. Private. Or so they thought. Karoline arrived alone. No staff. No Elias. Just her. A black coat that clung to her like armour, and a single item tucked into her inner pocket. A small silver USB drive. Her heels echoed through the quiet hallway as she was led into Kimmel's green room. He was already waiting, arms crossed, eyes tired but still defiant. "I figured you'd show," he said flatly. "I figured you'd be smarter than this," she replied, locking the door behind her with a deliberate click. Jimmy scoffed. "You didn't come for an interview, did you?" She stepped forward, slow and poised. "No, I came for closure." His jaw clenched. "You want revenge?" Karoline reached into her coat. "I want truth." From her pocket, she drew the USB and held it between her fingers like a blade. "Everything you tried to bury. Every victim silenced under your name, or by the men you protect. It's all here." His face lost its colour. "You wouldn't." "You're right. I won't," she said, dropping the drive onto the coffee table. "The network will." Jimmy lunged, not violently, but desperate, his fingers reaching for the drive before she could. In that instant, the room collapsed into chaos. He grabbed her wrist. She resisted. The struggle was brief, clumsy, but it ended with a sickening crack. His head collided with the sharp edge of the desk. The thud echoed like a gunshot. Karoline froze, staring as his body crumpled. Blood began to spill beneath him, forming a dark halo. Her breath quickened, but her expression remained still. Shocked, not shaken. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She stood over him, pulse racing under cool skin. For a moment, she just watched. Then, reaching down, she retrieved the USB and stepped toward the studio door. Security burst in, eyes wide at the scene. "Call an ambulance," she instructed, her voice calm, almost detached. "He's still breathing." One guard moved toward her, but she held up the USB. "Play this," she said. "The truth matters." They hesitated, caught in the gravity of the moment. Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder. Karoline remained upright, framed in the doorway like a statue carved from cold conviction. No tears, no apologies, just certainty. It didn't matter how the blood got on the floor. Not to her. What mattered was that someone finally listened. Really listened. And for once, the punchline wasn't hers to carry. The footage aired 2 weeks later. Not through a press release, but as a leak. Raw, unedited, and explosive. The internet devoured it. Millions watched as Karoline confronted Jimmy in that small green room. Her words cold and precise. The USB clinking onto the table like a gavel of judgment. They watched the scramble, the stumble, the fall, over and over again, dissected frame by frame. Public reaction was instant and violently divided. Protesters rallied outside the courthouse, some waving placards that read, "Free Karoline," others calling her a dangerous manipulator. Half the nation saw a woman cornered by media hypocrisy. The other half saw a cunning operator masking vengeance with righteousness. Jimmy Kimmel survived the incident, but the damage to his body and his brand was irreversible. He would never host again. In a video posted months later, he appeared, gaunt, voice gravelly, thanking fans for support while carefully avoiding Karoline's name. Lawsuits followed. Sponsors fled. Karoline was arrested at her hotel without resistance. Her crimson coat had been replaced with a grey jumpsuit, but her composure remained untouched. In the courtroom, she refused to be silent. What began as an Arraignment turned into a national spectacle. "They pushed me," she told the jury. Mockery disguised as entertainment. Character assassination passed off as comedy. When the truth gets laughed off, what option do you have left? Her words echoed through the media like a rallying cry. Former network employees, some reluctantly, confirmed that producers had engineered tension for ratings, encouraging Kimmel to goad her. But the most important witness, the one who held the keys to their manipulation, never showed. Elias Vaughn vanished without a trace. No forwarding number, no subpoena served, just a single envelope delivered to her cell. Inside, a note in his meticulous handwriting. The truth doesn't need a witness. It just needs a spark. The world moved on, but not quietly. Screens across the country flickered with outrage. Memes, parodies, campaign posters morphed into moral battlegrounds. Justice for Karoline trended beside cancel Jimmy. Lines blurred, truths twisted, and opinions hardened into identity. In talk shows and courtrooms, on corners and couches, the question lingered. Who crossed the line? In a culture driven by performance, where laughter shields cowardice and outrage becomes currency, who truly pays the price? The camera found her at dusk. A prison cell, bare, cold. Karoline sat still, fingers laced, lips parted in a whisper. "No one heard but her. They wanted the truth," she said. "I gave them fire.